Sources tell CNN one of two crew members have been rescued after a U.S. fighter jet was shot down over Iran. Images of the wreckage shared by Iranian state media match that of a U.S. F-15, including this ejection seat that appears to be damaged. Let's take a closer look now with Colonel Cedric Leighton. Colonel Leighton, we didn't see the seat there, but I'm sure you have the image here. When you see something like this, you hear that one of the crew members was rescued. No determination yet on the other one. What scenarios come to mind?
So there are a lot of scenarios that come to mind here, Boris, but as you can see, this, of course, is the ejection seat right here. It appears to have some damage associated with it. This would be consistent with an explosion that would be a natural part of the actual ejection. So basically, these have an explosive charge. These ejection seats have an explosive charge underneath them, and that forces, that explosive charge, when activated, forces the person that's sitting in the seat up out of the aircraft, and then that's when the parachutes are deployed and things like that happen. So this is not inconsistent with a safe ejection, and it's something that is definitely survivable from that, assuming that the impact and everything was as we see here, where everything is kind of right side up in this case.
Yeah. When it was initially reported, state media in Iran suggested that this was an F-35 stealth fighter jet, but upon closer inspection of some of the photos of the wreckage, analysts have since determined that this is more likely an F-15. It's more consistent with the makeup of an F-15. Help us understand.
Yeah, that is absolutely right. So, you basically look at the type of metal that is used in this particular case. You look at the markings, and you look at the way in which all of this is, printed in, stenciled in here, and the type of rivets that you see. All of that is consistent with an F-15. It is definitely not an F-35. And that is important because an F-15 is not a stealth aircraft. The F-35 is a stealth aircraft, and it's harder to detect, almost impossible for standard radar to detect the F-35. F-15 can be detected by radar.
Yeah, if it were an F-35, I imagine that it would symbolize a different capacity for Iran's military, whereas this does not. I do want to get your thoughts on the video that was geolocated by CNN showing a plane flying low over the ground while two helicopters are nearby. It's believed to be part of the rescue operation. Walk us through what's happening.
Yeah, so what you see here is there's a refueling aircraft here. That's a C-130, an HC-130, and that's designed to refuel helicopters like this. These are probably the HH-60 helicopters that are being used by the Air Force's search and rescue capability. There's a search and rescue unit that's out of the 1st Special Operations Wing that could possibly be involved in this. And these aircraft are designed to extend the range of the helicopters so they can go further into the area that we have here. So when you look at the area that you see here, this is in southwestern Iran called Khuzestan province. This is the area where this is most likely to have occurred, and it is an area where they would have had the capability to refuel even in Iranian airspace, so that could then extend their range into other parts of Iran if necessary.
Put this into context for us, because even if it is an F-15 and not an F-35, there is still some symbolism to draw from this, especially because just a few nights ago, you had the President of the United States touting the U.S. military's ability to destroy Iran's offensive capability. We've heard the Defense Secretary talking about dominion over the skies of Iran. This contradicts that to a degree. To a degree it does, yeah. And so you see, when you look at all of these strikes right here, there's a considerable amount of effort that was put into this. So there's no doubt that basically thousands of strike sorties were flown against western Iran, southern Iran, and of course the area around Tehran. And when you look at the concentration right here of strikes in this area, and then you look at the types of strikes that were done here in the western part of the country and in the west central part of the country, you can see that there are a lot of areas that have been hit. And of course, the Iranians are doing the same thing over here in Israel as well. But having said all of that, the key thing is this: no matter how often you strike at targets like this, there are still capabilities that are existent within the Iranian arsenal. CNN reporting has at least half of the missile forces that were believed to have existed before the
war still in existence right now. And one of the reasons for that is the way that they can disperse these forces. They have them on mobile launchers. They have them on trucks basically that go all over the place that are harder to detect. And plus they bury them underground. So they have these hardened tunnels that are designed specifically to survive these kinds of attacks. Iran has been preparing for this kind of a war for a very long time. And we're seeing the results of that preparation. It doesn't mean that they're winning, but what it does mean is that they have a capability to not only fight back, but they have a capability to down some of our aircraft if we're not careful and if the proper defenses aren't dispersed by the aircraft itself. F-15 does have the capability to disperse some defensive chaff, for example, which is like aluminum foil coming out of the aircraft. But be that as it may, they can do a lot of damage to aircraft like that, especially if it's a heat-seeking missile as opposed to a radar missile.
Colonel Cedric Leighton, appreciate the expertise. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Boris.
I want to bring in now retired U.S. Lieutenant General Mark Schwartz for more on this breaking news as we continue to ask about the fate of that second crew member. Thank you for being with us, and I do want to lean on your experience given your command of Special Forces. What is happening right now in terms of trying to keep that crew member alive? That crew member remains unaccounted for. And can you just kind of give us some insight onto how difficult this is? And I do want to bring up again for viewers that image that CNN has that was released by Iranian media of the damaged ejection seat. CNN analysis does indicate that it is likely from that CF-15.
Paula, good to be with you. So right now what's happening back at Central Command headquarters, probably a forward search and rescue headquarters where you saw that HC-130 and those Pavlov helicopters launched from. They're continuing the planning process. There's a high potential that they have communication with the other isolated crew member, whether that's the weapons service officer or the systems officer, or the pilot. Darkness is the friend of the isolated person and frankly the friend of the U.S. forces trying to recover this individual right now. So planning's ongoing right now. If they do have communications with them, they're setting up, an opportunity to retrieve him and recover him back into U.S. custody, if you will. And if they don't have communications with them, they're using every intelligence resource that they have available to include, satellite imagery, overhead, probably unmanned collection capability to assist in locating him. And then lastly, what I would say is they've certainly started the very quick debrief of the pilot or weapons systems officer that they have successfully recovered to, understand, hey, did you see two shoots? When you were ejected, and do you have an idea in proximity, from a cardinal direction of where that other parachute landed relative to where you were at. So all that information is being brought together to, again, facilitate a successful recovery.
Well, that certainly gives us some great insight. And against my apparently zero knowledge of what happens, you actually say that nighttime, the fact that it's nightfall now in Iran, might be a good thing. I do want to ask you, and it is a difficult thing for service members who have, they're wondering about their family members right now. There's survival training here, right? They are trained for being in enemy territory. What does that involve?
It is exceptional training. So every crew member, regardless of military service and special operations forces, go through what's called SEER Level C, which is the highest level of training. And that's survival and evasion, the most important part of where we're at right now with this isolated crew member. And then there's also resistance and escape. So in the event you become captured by enemy forces, they teach you how to deal with that captivity and also ways in which you could potentially escape captivity. But as part of all that training, a lot of technical training in terms of how to properly communicate, and then the actions that you should be taking in the event, you, in this case, you had to eject and now you're in enemy territory. Typically what they train you for is obviously find a place with good cover and concealment initially. So move away from, your parachute and the potential incident site where you came down, and try to put as much distance between that and, where you're going to be able to successfully hold up until such time that you can establish communication, and ideally they can facilitate the recovery.
I do want to go back to CNN's reporting here, though. Many of us wonder if they have air superiority. This was a fighter jet. Our intelligence, our exclusive reporting tells us that, again, Iran retains significant capability. When you put all of that together, can you let us in on what you think may have happened here in terms of how this jet was shot down?
Well, from the wreckage, and I'm no, wreckage expert, but it's hard to tell what brought the aircraft down. Obviously, when it hit, it, broke up in many pieces. It could have been anything from a surface-to-air missile fired by Iran, or it could have potentially been, some type of mechanical malfunction that caused the aircraft to go down. But remember, air superiority does not mean that there is no threat. That just means that we have the ability to predominantly fly over at mitigated risk over enemy territory. But superiority does not mean that there is no threat out there. And as has been reported, Iran still retains both air defense capability, certainly ballistic missile and drone capability. We see that playing out every day since this conflict started.
Okay, General, we'll leave it there for now. We'll continue to touch base with you as we continue to follow this breaking story. Really appreciate your insights.
It's important to remember that during President Trump's primetime national address on Wednesday, trying to sell his Iran strategy to a skeptical American public, he not only listed the ways he said Iran's war effort had been degraded, he called them beaten as well.
Tonight, Iran's Navy is gone. Their Air Force is in ruins. Their leaders, most of them, terrorist regime they led, are now dead. Their command and control of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is being decimated as we speak. We've beaten and completely decimated Iran. They are decimated, both militarily and economically and in every other way.
I have an excellent group of reporters at the table with me, including Jasmine Wright, who covers the White House for Notice. Look, the president has a penchant, shall we say, of, to put it mildly, exaggerating from time to time. But now this is life and death. This is the war. This is military. Is the president completely overstating the case about how bad it is for Iran right now?
Well, I think that these things happen.
What are
all
your
the
sources
time,
telling you?
Hopefully, they'll find the second service member. But when I talked to folks after the president's primetime speech on Wednesday, they told me, and these are people who are allied with the president, they didn't say he did a good job. They didn't say that they had a clear understanding. They said the most important part of his speech is that he didn't say boots on the ground. He didn't mention Carg Island. He didn't mention, yes, he mentioned an escalation when it came to airstrikes, but he didn't mention crossing a red line in which a lot of people have for him. And so there is concern that perhaps the president wasn't explicitly told how bad some of this could be. There is a concern that the U.S. could stay in Iran for longer than that 6-week threshold that the president told, from folks I've talked to outside and perhaps inside the administration. But fundamentally, they say that this feels as though it is contained for now, but let's see how that, of course, evolves.
And we're seeing how much the American public is skeptical, downright opposed this war. And if we see more instances like this, I can only imagine how public opinion will be shaped afterwards. This is what things currently stand, according to our new CNN poll that came out just a couple of days ago. How Trump is handling situation in Iran. Approve just 33% approve of his handling, 67% disapprove. And then, as Jasmine mentioned, the possibility of sending U.S. ground troops into Iran. If this leads to that, we don't know if it will lead to that. Just 11% favor that. That is a staggering. I mean, it's pretty clear where the American public stands on this.
Well, certainly nobody wants to see ground troops. You don't get to 68% unless you're getting that across all parties, Democrats, Republicans.
And just to add to that, to your point, Republicans, to look at 23%, just 23% of Republicans favor sending in U.S. ground troops.
So obviously, ground troops will cross a sort of political line for Trump that'll be very difficult for him to come back from. But, the war can be unpopular. The country can, as our poll shows, cannot have a clear path. Do not believe that President Trump has a clear path on how to get out of this. And yet, there can still be a lot of military success at damaging Iran's capabilities. Now, our reporting here at CNN obviously shows that doesn't mean damaging it 100%. They're obviously,
even though he's suggesting that.
But clearly that's not the case. Look at today's events. I mean, it is not the case, nor is it the case in any war that I can think of where 100% completely annihilating any possible threat or capability from the enemy. That's not reality, and we're seeing that play out today, that's not reality. That doesn't diminish in any way the unbelievable military success that Trump and Hegseth like to tout, and rightfully so. It just doesn't simplify, though, the complicated nature that the U.S. is not the only one with a vote here on how this plays out.
Yeah, and look, why not, I mean, Trump is Trump. We know how he talks. But why not do what David is suggesting here? Give a more nuanced picture to the American public about how complicated this is. Yes, the American military operation so far has been successful in this way, in this way, in this way. But we have enormous challenges on X, on Y, and Z. And there are lots of challenges ahead. Level with the American public and tell American voters what to expect. Why can't he do that?
I mean, you answered the question. Trump is Trump. He's not a nuanced guy.
But would
He's
that
never
help
been
him
a
with,
nuanced guy.
with so many Americans oppose it? Probably because a lot of people just don't believe what he's saying, perhaps.
No, they're wildly skeptical, to say the least. And I go back to David's point. There can be enormous military successes, and still an incident like this. There have been thousands of sorties by American and Israeli pilots. We only are aware of this one terrible incident, and hopefully the other pilots recovered. But that doesn't mean that there is not an overwhelming military victory. And even if there's an overwhelming military victory, the war can still be unpopular. The United States won all the battles in Vietnam and lost the war. I mean, so this is a very, very difficult situation. He went into this without building up public support. It's not going to build up during the wars happening. It's not this. They don't see it. Plus, the Pentagon is not really turning over a lot of information. Everything they show is, this PR effort they had mounted of, unbelievable successes and things blowing up. That's not, you're not going to all start talking about, nuance and, how difficult, how complex the situation is in the middle of that. This is not the administration to do that. It's not the president. It's not the Secretary of Defense to do that. It's just not the way these people operate.
Especially when you're getting hit with high gas prices, things are going up. Then there's questions about the Strait of Hormuz, how Trump's messaging that. The messaging keeps changing. It's a very confusing picture to the American public, which is probably reflected in those very bad poll numbers for the president on the war.